That's not my lane. I'm not going to give you legal analysis on whether Gavin Newsom should be arrested, but he ought to be tarred and feathered. I'll say that. I mean, look, he's standing in the way of the administration and the carrying out of federal law.
Okay, that from U.S. House Speaker Mike Johnson amid the continuing demonstrations in Los Angeles, which includes a back and forth between President Donald Trump and California Governor Gavin Newsom.
And they have a long history of liking each other a lot. Yes, that is sarcasm. ABC's Steven Portnoy is watching it all play out and joins us now. Steven, based on what we heard in the speaker's own voice, I mean, that's a pretty clear statement. Is it correct?
Well, look, I mean, the House Speaker is talking about tarring and feathering the governor of California. The question is whether he's speaking literally or figuratively. You might think figuratively, but Gavin Newsom seemed to be taking it literally, saying that, earlier this week there was this conversation about whether the president would order the arrest of California's governor. The president indicated he thought it was a great idea, and you heard the speaker say, well, I don't know about that, but I think he should be tarred and feathered. So Newsom said, all right, they've moved on from arresting me to now in undertaking some sort of a colonial torture. And he called that a fitting threat because he says the Republicans, quote, want to bring our country back to the 18th century. Look, there's a lot of powerful rhetoric, but legally speaking, the governor of California and his attorney general have gone into court. And there's a hearing in this case tomorrow in federal court in California about whether the president has properly exercised his authority to federalize the National Guard and to send in 700 Marines. We're starting to see pictures now of armed soldiers with their rifles accompanying ICE agents as they're conducting the civilian law enforcement. And the question is whether that violates the Posse Comitatus Act, which is the 1878 law that says that the military is not to engage in civilian law enforcement. There are exceptions to it. Those exceptions include cases of rebellion or insurrection. The president has not yet invoked the Insurrection Act. He has been asked whether he will. He has indicated he has not yet reached that decision. But the question is whether what the president has done so far is in keeping with the law or violates the law, and if so, what are the courts prepared to do about it? So far, the judge in California that's been asked to hear this case declined to grant a temporary restraining order, which is something that Gavin Newsom wanted. He didn't get it. Let's see what happens next.
Now, back to Mike Johnson for a minute, Stephen. House speakers are partisan. We do know that. They are members of one party or the other, but they lead the entire U.S. House. And, of course, we think back, we remember Paul Ryan rallying the House after a gunman opened fire on Republican members practicing for a softball game. Have we heard this kind of rhetoric before from a House Speaker?
Well, I'm sure you could point to examples of things that Nancy Pelosi said that were partisan, too. But the question is, look, Gavin Newsom, who had an 8-minute video yesterday, said that Congress has failed to stand up to President Trump, that the founders had it in mind that there would be 3 separate and equal branches of government. And the argument is the Republican Party is allowing the president to overstep and overtake those other 2 branches, which could have lasting damage to the republic and the constitutional system that we have in this country, which was designed to protect our individual freedoms and rights. So the question becomes, all right, how will that manifest? What will happen? The governor of California is trying to draw public attention to it. Well, he may have his own political ambitions. Wouldn't be a big surprise.
Well, Stephen, it's as somebody who's done news for, let's just say, more than the last 5 minutes, seeing this back and forth is a little bit jarring. Do we have any idea how actual American voters are feeling about this kind of back and forth between the president and the governor of a state?
Well, public opinion surveys would indicate that the president has the popular support to enforce the immigration law. But as the public starts to see images of armed soldiers with their M4 rifles or whatever firearms they happen to be carrying, accompanying civilian law enforcement as they're going into workplaces, and what Gavin Newsom describes as ripping families apart, hardworking people who may have violated the law to cross the border to come here, but many years since, perhaps a decade or more, working to better their communities and their families' lives, to be ripped away and essentially banished from the country, that is perhaps going to bring about a different way of thinking about this, and that certainly was something that the Democrats are counting on. The president seems to believe that this is something that the country very much wants. And he also argues that the reason it's necessary to ramp up the enforcement now is to not just send a deterrent to those who would try to come here and haven't yet, but also to prevent the kind of unrest that we're seeing to a limited extent inside the view of a single camera lens in Los Angeles from popping up in other cities in the country.
ABC Steven Portnoy with us from Washington this morning.
Thanks for watching Arizona's Morning News. Click to watch more from KTAR News and hit the button in the middle to subscribe.